bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Okay, so welcome to this 10-day Metta Vipassana retreat, and it's really good to see you here. And the first thing to recognize is that this is time for yourself.
Can everybody hear?
No,
Okay.
Okay.
You can use this one.
Okay. So the thing to recognize is that this time is for yourself. It's the time to invest in yourself. And so it's important to give yourself the best opportunity. And one of those things is to try as best as you can to leave behind all the things that you've left behind in order to come here. And to help that, we'd ask you to release up all your technology. Technology is a necessary thing in daily life, but we're looking to move beyond the aspect of daily life, and it's very supportive to release that. If we need to make any arrangement for people to have an emergency contact number or something like that, then I think Siobhan has already shared his number. And I can't emphasize enough how much it frees the mind up.
And if you have some special cases, you can speak to me directly, and we can discuss about that.
So, we're going to be together for 10 days, and we want to adopt, the attitude to adopt towards this is one of investigation and exploration. Treat it as moving into unknown territory. Even if in the past you've done something similar, have that view that you're moving into something which is different and new. And if we can have that sense of curiosity, Sister Kima, one of our founding teachers, used to say, you need to have the attitude of a child who's just looking around the corner. That's wondering what's around the corner. And we kind of need to have that attitude. And it's really helpful to have that curiosity without expectation.
One is that there are no two retreats as the same, So there are no two experiences which would be the same. So kind of approaching it with a kind of a new eyes every time. What you can do is sit in the moment. So just be with the present.
And just picking up a point that Bantis mentioned there about no two retreats are the same, it's really useful to think of it as how the essence of the practice comes through. Because inevitably, whatever retreat we do, there's a lot of noise, things we see, things we experience, and all the rest of it, as well as the truths that we're looking to explore. And sometimes it's difficult to distinguish the noise from the truths. But as you practice one day to the next, and the next, and the next, or one retreat to the next, what you're doing is you're improving what's called the signal to noise ratio. The things that get distracting are generally random. The truths are much more coherent. And so as you go through this, or you travel from one retreat to the next, see whatever the experience is as adding more information into what you've come to understand. So, some of you will have already been on twin retreats. Some of you will be new to the practice. And just to recognize that whatever your previous experience, if it's none, well, you're a clean slate coming to this. But if you've already had meditation retreats and experiences, none of this is wasted. The approach that we take is a combination of samatha and vipassana, calm and insight. You may have practiced a method which is been predominantly samatha, or you may have practiced a form which was predominantly vipassana. Well, however it is, this will be useful in the coming days. So don't feel that you're being invited to throw away something and start again. No, this is about an evolution from wherever you are. I've mentioned Sister Kima already once. Sister Kima and Bhante Vipassana are the founding teachers of this approach. And you'll hear us mention them every now and then because they are a source of inspiration around the practice. So if those names crop up, I just wanted to introduce them and to say that sadly, 4 years ago, they both died within a short period of each other. They were in different parts of the world. And so unexpectedly, we moved on to, if you like, the next generation of teachers. And we do our best to carry that forward. There's a certain schedule to the day, and what we'd ask you to do is to be on time. In fact, if you're 5 minutes early, it will help your meditation. So the start in the morning, we'll be getting up at about 5:30. The yoga will be at 6. We'll first of all meet here. With the number of people we have here, we might be able to do the yoga in this room if we move the chairs right out to the back. So that might be better than doing it downstairs, but we'll play with that and see. And then there's the lunch bell, and then there's the evening bell for the Dharma talk. And these are times to turn up promptly. And even if you feel that some of what's going on a particular occasion may not be what you would want to do, just come. Because being in that environment is very supportive, and it's amazing what you can learn by observing others as well as observing yourself. When one of the teachers or guides comes into the room, please stand. It's not about us individually. It's simply an act of respect for the Dharma that's being shared. And it's just a helpful way to send a message to our mind and our body that this is a time for learning. Questions? If you don't ask questions, you weren't learning. Okay? So rather than this being a one-way transmission, it's a conversation. And the temptation is always to feel that somehow our question is a small thing. And, you know, there's of relative unimportance. Well, whatever question you've got, the chances are somebody else has also got that question going on. So please ask. Sometimes the questions which feel almost small actually reveal something quite large. So never think that your question is not useful or relevant. Now, there are times when questioning is available. That's in the yoga. Okay, it's in your interview, and it's in the Dharma talk. At other times, please observe no silence. The resistance felt when we're observing noble silence is a great teacher. Because resistance is question.
Sorry, not question, request. Can you use the mic? Because I find it quite difficult, your voice is so soft.
Is the mic down, system? Let me just check.
Thank you.
And one other thing is that whenever we are giving a Dhamma talk, you can raise your hand and ask a question. So there is no that you have to wait till the end to ask the question. If you don't understand a point at that time, raise a hand and ask the questions. One other thing about the question is about Bhante Vimaram Singh. He used to say this jokingly, half jokingly, that Buddha was asked how people are born dumb. So the Buddha said that people are born dumb because they don't ask questions in the previous lives. So they are born less intelligent. Then if you ask questions, then you have more clarity and the doubts are cleared. So Bhante Vimaramji used to ask a lot of questions with his teacher, Usilananda. So once he got so annoyed, his teacher got so annoyed, he said that, oh, you ask me so many questions. If you are not becoming enlightened in this lifetime, you will become an Einstein in the next. So always ask. Okay, we'll figure that out.
We'll figure this out, and in the meantime, I'll speak a little louder.
Well, if you want to put this down and please.
It's okay because I have lower back issues, so I need the back to support.
So there's a back
Trust
support.
me, you won't work. I mean,
So, just to reiterate, times to ask questions are in the yoga, in your interview, and in the Dharma talk. It's often not possible to fully comprehend the Dharma talk without asking questions. So, if you don't understand, that's a great question. Don't feel your question needs to have some profound structure to it. If you hear something that we're saying and you go, I don't understand that, or how does that relate to the practice? That's a great question. Only silence is ignorant, not questions. Yes.
This is my first time, and what if the mind gets too busy? So how do we calm the mind?
We'll come on to this. Don't worry. There are 2 meals a day. Okay, and the times for the meals are in the back of your brochure. Okay. If there's anyone here who, for medical reasons, needs to have a 3rd meal, maybe they're taking evening medication or something like that, then please talk to Siobhan and some arrangement will be made. But for the majority of us, it's 2 meals a day. And the reason for that is the fact that eating takes a lot of energy in the body to digest. And what we would like is that energy to be available for something else. All right? And we're all familiar with the response in the body when we eat. There's a sense of drowsiness. And so what we would like to do is restrict the eating to about 6 hours in a day so that we can also spend the rest of the time available for the practice itself and for a balanced sleep.
But we'll have some tea or coffee also. So at that time we may have certain fruit or some light thing which you can have, maybe soup or something like that. So soups are allowed. So we'll have a soup or something like that. So you have something sustainable. And believe me, when I started off in Wat Pah Nanachat, when I went in Thailand, there was 1 meal a day. So I ate a full bowl and I had some packets in my hand. So I said, oh, I have to eat a lot. Then I by the evening time I thought nothing has digested, everything is there in my. I have to eat a little less. So I started eating less and lesser. I was eating 1/4, and I was able to kind of sustain on 1 meal a day. They had a 4 or 5 o'clock. They had some tea, coffee, and all those things. but it was hierarchical. So I was a new entrant, so I would get only the leftovers, but it was enough. But trust me, we think that we need 3 meals, but really we can sustain on 2.
It's a, I remember it as a feature of meditation retreats that I've been on, where I'd be looking at the meal, the plate of food, and my mind would go, but I'm not going to eat again for another 18 hours. and that thought originally, was the, as Bante says, need to eat it. But it's amazing that once it takes about 3 days, but the body begins to adjust and it begins to change. And that's also a very useful thing to see, because we all have a relationship to food, and whatever that is, it's worth investigating and to understand it. Okay, now as you can see, we have a certain amount of filming done. This is to enable the talks to be available outside. And I just want to ask, is there anyone who would be uncomfortable being filmed? Is everyone happy with that? Okay, that's very good. Because otherwise we will ask you to be out of frame, or to position yourself behind the camera when people are talking, or we're doing something in the yoga or whatever. Okay, but everyone's comfortable with that.
I'll just be behind the frame.
You'll be behind.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. All right. So the basic instructions for the practice. Now, whatever your previous practice has been.
One thing I just wanted to say, this has happened always. See, if you are already doing some practice like what we have said, if you are doing twin practice, which we had other levels, so like directions, then you continue with that. Don't come back to spiritual friend. You continue with your practice if you are practicing. Okay, so there are a few who are repeats. So just to make sure you don't every time come back to the spiritual friend. If you're doing directions, start with directions, and then if you have difficulty, then in the morning you can speak, or you can speak to me, and we can just resolve, but you start with that. And for the new people, this instructions will be the first time.
Whoever is practicing, it's always worth remembering that this is a smiling practice. A lot of different meditation approaches require different things. But sometimes these can be very earnest and very serious. And we're looking to develop a lightness of mind, not a heaviness of mind, an expansiveness of mind. And smiling is really, really helpful in the practice. And it doesn't mean that we have to have an artificial smile, but it's just that soft lifting of the corners of the mouth, the soft lifting of the corners of your eyes. So whenever you notice your facial expression has even become neutral, just smile. You're not interrupting your meditation when you do this. In fact, what took the smile away was interrupting the meditation. Okay. Any preoccupations that come up, things that you've not done, just put them to one side. Okay. You will have forgotten to do something. Don't worry. And you won't be alone in the room. And just allow yourself to put it to one side. It's very helpful to see the stickiness of that. If only I've done that, I can calm it out. It's our relationship to that which will help us be calm. And remembering that this isn't an intellectual exercise. It's not just a cognitive process. In other words, the mind is solely involved. Bhante Vipassana was very keen that people understood that this was a feeling meditation. So sensation is important. And part of the process is one of connecting to that sensation and understanding our relationship to it. We use loving kindness as an object of meditation. And the Buddha said loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, equanimity. He said if you were ever to get attached to anything in this mundane life, get attached to these, because they're the most wholesome of states. So when we work initially from loving kindness as our object of attention, we're inviting our mind to be in a wholesome state, a constructive state. And then what we're interested in is what takes us away from the wholesome and how to come back. And when we come back to the awareness of loving kindness. But we don't come back to a feature of the loving kindness. So loving kindness might have a feeling of warmth, or a feeling of expansion, or a feeling of joy. But we don't use these as our object of attention. What we use is the awareness that the loving kindness is there. So this is a light touch, rather than a detailed holding on to the features of the loving kindness or compassion.
And don't have any preconceived notions about how it should feel. It could be just a calm feeling, or it could just be a feeling which is maybe just subtle. So anything which is there, just you be with that, rather than having an idea of what I have to be with. Be with what is there in the present, rather than an idea of what it should be.
So it's very important that you may have read about loving kindness. And reading about things is helpful. But the thing that's unhelpful is it sometimes creates a concept in our mind, an image in our mind, as a way of trying to understand what's on the page. And then we can get caught in the image. And then we can spend our time meditating, looking for what we think it should be, rather than seeing what it actually is. So if you have previous experience of this, or you've read around the practice or loving kindness, try to put aside that. The loving kindness can manifest in different ways. So what we're looking for is the characteristic of loving kindness, in the fact that it's a sense of uplift in the state of mind. But its actual features and forms, don't get caught up with. Just recognize the presence of it. You'll be invited, if you're not familiar with loving kindness, to generate the feeling of loving kindness initially. And this is often described as thinking of something which makes you joyful and happy. Now, what's helpful here is trying not to make this something about somebody else. Try to make it as reasonably abstract as possible. So rather than thinking of a person that makes you happy, maybe think of a context that makes you happy. Maybe a sunset, or the smell of coffee, or the feeling of the sun on your back, or the idea of playing with a young child, or a puppy, or some things which don't have a specific emotional memory to them, which is but is a more of a general thing because, you know, people make us happy, but the same person doesn't always make us happy.
There are certain other examples I'll give you. Is there was one student of mine was happy when he saw a tree. That happiness he had, that feeling of happiness, or thinking about dolphins, or thinking about flowers. That sense of happiness or some can be unique to yourself. So just be with that feeling of what is there in the present, rather than with the memory which is there.
Yes. Can it also be the feeling of gratefulness also into this?
Whatever feels nice for you at that point of time, but don't have a story, and don't be with the story, but be with the feeling.
So the question there was, can we have a sense of gratitude as a way of going into loving kindness? And yes, indeed. But usually our sense of gratitude is associated with certain circumstance. And so just be careful not to get caught in the circumstance. And so what we have is we're generating this feeling. And once we've generated the feeling, we just allow whatever was used to create the feeling to softly fade away. Don't push it away. Don't hold on to it because it's a nice thing to see. Yeah? Just allow it to fade on its own. And you don't need to check if it's gone. Just don't pay any attention. Just place the attention on the feeling of loving kindness. Yeah? And then the practice is understanding what takes you away from that feeling. And what takes you away from it is when the mind is distracted. And what distracts the mind? Well, it's one of the six senses. So in Buddhism, there are six senses and not five. So we're familiar with the eye, the ear, the nose, the tongue, and the tactile sense of the body. And then in Buddhism, the sixth sense is the mind. So the eye has an object, and we have eye consciousness when all three come together. And with the mind, we have thoughts or images in the mind, and it generates mind consciousness. And those three come together, we get the contact. So allowing yourself to treat all six senses, sense doors, in the same way. Don't make the mind more special than any of the others. Now, when you're distracted, it means that your attention has moved from the awareness of the loving kindness to the object of distraction. Now, distractions build, they grow. And as with anything that grows, it needs food. And the food it uses is your attention. When you give the distraction your attention, you are feeding it. So don't get into a debate with a distraction. Don't engage in conversation or dialogue with it. Simply recognize that the mind, your mind, is no longer with your object of meditation. As soon as you do that, you are no longer paying attention to the distraction. Because you know it's there rather than being lost in it. So you're already back meditating. The period that you were lost in it, there was just no meditation. It's not a bad thing, it's just that you weren't meditating. But as soon as you know it's there, the distraction, you are meditating. Now, what do we normally do when we realize our mind is being distracted?
Pull our attention to.
Yeah. Well, we get annoyed. Oh, why is my mind not over there? Why can't I concentrate? Why can't I? So So now we've stopped meditating because we were aware that we were distracted, and we're back lost in thought again. Yeah? So don't criticize yourself when your mind has moved. It is in the nature of mind to move. What we're trying to do is understand nature. And we're not going to do that unless your mind moves. So don't worry about the mind moving. So you recognize the mind has moved, and then you release away from it. Now, that little phrase can sometimes feel a bit like, you know when you have a piece of cellophane, small piece of cellophane, it gets caught on your hand, and you sort of do this, and all it does is go around on the back of your hand. You can't let it go. Okay? So if we think release, I have to let go of something, then we're looking for something to happen in our mind. Okay? And that's attachment again. We're wanting our mind to do something. So instead of that, recognize that the release step is the movement of your mind from the attention on what distracted you back towards the meditation object. But first of all, you need to recognize the tension associated with that distraction. And there will be a tension around your brain. It may be very soft. It may be, if you're not really angry, if whatever images come up, it will be very noticeable. But there will also be a tension in your body. And you need to release both. Now, release here does not mean the tension disappears. It means you've released your attachment to the tension. And you do that by inviting the mind to relax around the tension and relax around the tension in your body.
I just wanted to add that when we are talking about release, it is not about suppression, making it go away, changing it. When we are saying release, the words the Buddha is using is abandon, let it go, relinquish. So that are the words the Buddha is using. So it is like let it be. It may still be there, functional. The thought may be functional, but our attention to that thought is released. So we are not wanting this thought to be inhalated, suppressed, or changed, but our attention to that thought has been released. So, yes?
So when we release those thoughts, then the new thought will come in, right?
Yeah, but our attention now goes to the other process which he said of the relaxing.
So when we do the recognize, the release, and the relax, that process is one of changing our relationship to the tension that distraction created. And that tension is what's called craving. And craving is what we really need to understand. So we see craving as cause of distraction, and with the release step, if you like, it's taking the effort that we have put in to be with that distraction and turning it into something else. As Dante says, the thought can continue. This is not about having a still mind or an empty mind. It's your relationship to how the mind is moving. So you release and then you relax attention. And that is the first of the 3 of the 6 arts. And that is purifying your mind. Purifying it of what? Of the unwholesome state that the distraction was. Now, it's very important to understand that unwholesome is not the same as bad or unkind or wrong. An unwholesome state is simply one that's taking you away from your chosen object of meditation. It could be pleasant feeling, a lovely thought, a generous thought. And it's taking you away from your objective meditation. And that's what we need to release. Okay? So don't think that unwholesomeness is a category of or a quality of thought. It isn't. What's caused that distraction is that you've taken whatever came up in the mind personally.
It's not a moral thing. It's a practical thing which is there. Practically, you have to be over here. You are not here, or you with the loving kindness, but you are with something else. So that is the what we call it unwholesome. You can say not useful, useful, skillful, not skillful. Other words are used.
So we've relaxed as best we can around our brain and wherever the tension was in our body. And then we re-smile. And the smile is something that we feel all the way through the body until our eyes are set. Okay? So we're back to the body sensation again. Re-smile isn't simply a cognitive thing, isn't simply a physical thing. You're looking for the felt experience in the body. Okay? And it may be very small. Don't try to make it what you think it should be. But if you release tension, there'll be an effect. If you have the intention to release tension, there will be an effect. Even if the tension itself hasn't really changed, there will be a difference. Because your intention has changed. So we re-smile, we then return to the feeling of loving kindness. If it's not present, just bring up the thought again to regenerate it. But remember, the feeling can be quite soft. So you don't have to return to some big feeling, something soft. And expect to repeat this hundreds of times. Okay? Bhante used to say, if you're sitting for 45 minutes and you do the 6 hours 50 times, that's a great meditation. Why? Because you've seen your mind move 50 times. He used to say, if you come to me and say, I was completely calm, nothing moved, nothing. He said, well, this is candy. You just need to switch off. The opportunity to learn when the mind is not moving is much more restricted. So we're consciously not trying to develop a calm mind. Calmness may appear, but it's a consequence of other things. It's not the thing itself.
And one more thing Bhante used to say is, the only time you are not meditating is when the thought comes, your attention is there on the thought, and you continue thinking. That when the recognize happens, you don't drop the thought, but you continue. That is the only time you are not meditating. So if you are distracted for a while, it's okay, but when you recognize, there is no release which is happening. So in mid sentence also, you let it go.
Sorry, I have a lot of questions.
One more, can you get us some water, please?
So while you're meditating and there are many thoughts, right? So you recognize the thoughts, correct?
No.
How does it work? It's like you have many thoughts, so it's like recognizing.
We're relaxed, don't we?
It's like recognizing a pattern, so you know where does this comes from. Yeah.
Yeah. See, you have to stay with the attention. So your attention has to be with the feeling of loving kindness. Only when you are distracted, now you know your attention is there with the thought. At that point of time, if you don't release it, What are you doing? You are thinking. You are not doing the meditation. When you have recognized, you have to have the release. Let it be where it is, the thought. Let the thought be. It may change also, it may be replaced also, but let the thought be. We are not fighting with the thought. We are not trying to suppress it. We are not trying to change it. We are not doing anything with the thought. We let the thought be, then relax, smile, come back. And just be with this feeling.
It takes about a day to get an handle. Don't get nervous about it.
Yeah.
So when I came the first time, it took me a full day.
Yeah.
One thing,
I'm just going to say one thing and I'll pick up it. Have fun. Have fun with this. You know, getting it wrong is getting it right. Okay? So don't stress about getting it right. Yeah. I used to, when I was in business, I might go into an environment where there was a particular problem, but they weren't clear what the problem was. So I would do an exercise called knotting the problem, because there was a lot of agreement about what the problem wasn't. And then we end up with this sort of space in the middle, which is what the problem is. So getting it wrong is like going, I know it's not that. Okay, oh, it's not that. Okay, and then you get to the point where, so it's this. So don't feel, you know, getting it wrong is a problem. Because getting it wrong is a route to getting it right. Okay. Please.
I was just going to ask, so if we're in meditation and a thought comes up, but we still have attention on the object, we don't 6R at that point, correct?
That's the mind is constantly busy. There's going to be background stuff going on all the time. If we can get away from the idea that we're trying to clear the mind, we're not trying to do that. What we're trying to do is read our book on a noisy bus. Okay? Now, on a noisy bus, we can get distracted and start listening to the conversations around us. Okay, and how much of the book are we going to read? We can be reading the book and get annoyed, and we end up reading the same paragraph countless times. Okay? Or we can stand up, turn around, and demand that us shut up. None of those are going to help. Okay? And we're tempted to do all of those in our meditation. So don't try to get the bus quiet. Don't get caught up with the conversations. Recognize that you get irritated by the conversation or you're getting attracted to it. Release, relax, smile, come back. Get back onto the book. Yeah? Yes?
What if I recognize the thought and I'm unable to release it or relax it?
Okay. So the thing is, when the thought is very engaging, okay, then we have to recognize that we're really caught up in this thought. When you recognize we're really caught up, in that moment you are not caught up because you're seeing the thought, not being in the thought. That's your moment of opportunity. That's when you decide to release, relax, be smile, come back. You might get caught up straight away again. You go through the same process. Don't use the 6 R's to beat the thought down. Don't use the 6 R's to try and control your mind. Use the 6 R's to see how your mind is caught. Because in seeing that, you'll begin to understand. Is that okay? Any other questions?
When I'm looking at that happy object or whatever is creating my happiness, am I not craving for it? So am I not generating a craving for that?
Well, this is where the Buddha's invitation, if you're going to be attached to anything, be attached to the loving kindness. Because initially, feels like that. I want this feeling to be there. Okay? But then we have to let the wanting go and just observe it for itself. Okay? So just notice its characteristic. And notice the temptation to want it for it to be a particular way. Okay? Don't do that. Just allow it to be itself.
That wanting is also a thought. I want it. Then you recognize that also, that there is a wanting which is there. That also can be let go. Let go is let go of the attention to that. Relax, re-smile, come back.
And one of the things I'll explain in the yoga is how we can encourage the feeling of loving kindness through our relationship to our physical body. Okay. So, one of the really important things that Bhante Vipassana talked about was the difference between concentration and what he described as collectedness. Okay. So, I want you to put your thumb up. Right in front of you. And I want you to look at your thumbnail. And I want you to think of your eyes as lasers. And I want you to bore a hole through the center of that nail with your eyes. And notice what's happened to your body, your breath, and your mind. What did you notice? What? Give me a description of
Body is stiff,
body is stiff,
eyes are completely fixed,
eyes are fixed, there's tension.
there's a lot of tension both in the body and in the mind.
And what's happened to your breath?
It's almost you're holding it also.
Holding your breath.
When you're doing the bowing, you're holding it.
This is concentration. Now I want you to have two thumbs. Okay. And I want you to smile. Okay. And then I want you to separate your thumbs like this, as wide as they can go, and you can still see them in your peripheral vision, in your side vision. If you go too far, they disappear. How does your body feel?
It loosens up.
How does your mind feel? How does your breath feel?
Oh, it's moving.
So, this is collected awareness rather than concentrated awareness. So, this is the mind we want when we know the loving kindness is there. Not concentrating on a particular aspect of the loving kindness. Okay? Just know it's there. Just like you know the sky is blue. Or any other kind. Okay. Now we're going to do this loving kindness towards ourselves for 10 minutes. You might do it for 20 minutes. Do it, initially for the first day or so, until you feel comfortable with it. And then when you're comfortable with it, we're going to invite you to share it. But initially, we want you to share it with a particular person. And that person is your spiritual friend. And your spiritual friend is someone of the same gender who's alive, not a family member, and is not seriously ill or unwell.
Like on a dead bed or something like that, he can be having some ailments, that is okay.
And the way I like to think of this is you have the intention to share this feeling. And what do we by sharing this feeling? We would sincerely wish them to feel what we feel. And simply have that intention. Resist the temptation to try and have them as an image and send something to them. Because that again brings in effort, brings in concentration. So I find it helpful to have the intention in the mind, to have a sincere intention that they should share that. And if an image of them comes up without you generating it, allow that image to just be sharing the speaking. Sometimes it's helpful to think of them as sitting beside you. Sometimes it feels like they're joining you. But none of this is prescriptive. Just allow it to be whatever it is. So, let's say our first sit is 30 minutes. Then maybe 10, 15 or 20 minutes initially is for ourselves. And then we expand it out to our spiritual friend. As we develop in the next couple of days, that proportion will change. But initially, to get used to this, something like that is very helpful. We spend 10 minutes for ourselves, and then we're with the spiritual friend. Don't get caught up with the friend. You're not having a conversation with them, you're not having a dialogue. You've just named them, you know that's the person that you're working with. 90% of your time plus is with the feeling of the loving kindness, not with the image of the person. But when we generate the loving kindness, we say in our mind, may I be well, may I be joyful, may I be happy. And we say this not as a mantra, so we don't keep repeating it, but we just say it every once in a while. And then when we move to our spiritual friend, we go, as I wish for myself, so I also wish for you. May you be well, may you be joyful, may you be happy.
Yes, question.
When we do this with the feeling or an image of a spiritual friend, will the spiritual friend also have that kind of energy or that feeling?
Don't speculate. Don't speculate. Okay? All it is what you're responsible for. Okay? So don't feel you have to kind of turn the volume up so that they feel it more. Just let it be itself.
What I say is that the loving kindness has its own intelligence. It will do its own job. You just allow it to do it. There has been many experiences, but we are not here for those kind of experiences where the spiritual friend may kind of remember you or may so that can happen. But we are not here to do that. That is all you left it to the universe to kind of, it has its own intelligence. You stay with, as you said, intention, and you stay with that intention of sharing, and let everything happen. But if you want to have that connection or something like that, and you kind of push, then there can be a lot of tension and something like that. So just stay with this and let it happen, because it has its own kind of way of doing things.
See, when we push, we're imposing our idea of what the meditation should be. So the meditation can't teach us anything, because we're just making it compliant with what we think it should be. So we have to come back from that. Now, when we sit and other postures of meditation, we may find that we have discomfort in the body. Now, there's a simple way of working with this discomfort, and that is to see what happens when you stand up after your meditation. If this discomfort disappears almost immediately, then it's mostly going to be mind generated. And the mind is very, very clever at generating stuff. So you can continue to sit in that way the next time. But if when you get up, after some minutes, 10 minutes, there's still that resonance of the pain, then you need to find a different way of sitting. Sitting in a chair is absolutely fine. Sitting on the floor, sitting with support, and if you have difficulty or you're working with pain, you can come and see me, and I can give you some suggestions about how to work with that. All right? Do not ignore pain. It's there to teach you something. If it's meditation pain, it's to show you where your aversion is and to show your relationship to aversion. If it's physical pain, it's telling you, please don't do this. And you need to listen to it and adopt a different position. Do not persist through physical pain.
She had a question, yes.
Yeah. I actually want to ask, you said to choose a spiritual friend of the same gender. I'm curious to know why. One, two, on what, if it's not a family, how do I, like, you also said not to give an image to it, like, or an identity you meant, right? So, I'm not able to, like, without giving the identity or without addressing that person, feel the urge, the happiness around the. So how do I like go?
When you choose a spiritual friend, they clearly have an identity.
Yeah.
So that's fine. The family member is because, as with any family, we may have favorite family member for once we feel are a positive part of our lives, but there will always be occasions when it's different. Families are complex. We'll come on to families later on in the practice, but it's to avoid that complexity. And the gender is to avoid the sense of complexity when it comes to someone of the opposite gender, in terms of how they respond, how you respond, the understanding of that dynamic. Again, we can come to that later in. It's to keep the practice simple.
So when you start off, there is a set of rules. When you go into middle, there is a set of rules. When you advance, there is a set of rules. And there are no rules when you go home. Then you can have your own way. Yeah?
It's just to keep the mind at its simplest level as we start the practice here. When you take loving kindness into your daily life, send it to anyone and everyone. So the distractions that come up, we'll talk much more about them. And there are various things which describe our attachment or our aversion, our restlessness, our anxiety. But the thing that's likely to come up quite quickly is sloth and torpor. And sloth and torpor is the sluggishness of the mind. And we need to make a friend of sloth and torpor because it's going to be around in one form or another for quite a period. And the best way to make a friend and to have it not take us out of balance is to take an interest in it when it's there. So if we're feeling tired, how does that feeling of tiredness feel in the body? How does it feel in the mind? What's going on in the mind right now? The more interest we take and the more energy we put in, the more readily the sloth and torpor begins to change. Okay? You're not using the interest to get rid of it, you're using the interest to explore its nature. And then when we begin to explore its nature, that's when change begins. And we can sometimes have doubt. You know, am I doing the practice the right way? Did I understand the instructions? Is this working properly? All of these things. When doubt comes up, one of the things that Metta Vipassana used to say is that hindrances are your friends. Why are they your friends? Because they show you where your attachment and aversion is. Okay? And doubt is a form of aversion. We doubt that we're doing it right. Well, remember, the only doing you need to do is to observe what's there. So if doubt is there, know your feelings.